Hey guys, welcome to Kludgy Tech Time. I'm David, and today we're talking all about the Mavic 2 Zoom. Now, this is my first day flying it, so this is just my first impressions. This is not a full review or anything like that. I just want to know, is the Zoom a gimmick or is it for real? Stick around and we're going to talk all about my first day flying the Mavic 2 Zoom. Well, thanks for sticking around, guys. Today we're talking all about the Mavic 2 Zoom, and I want to know if this Zoom is just a gimmick or if it is for real. Now, I didn't buy this aircraft. This is an aircraft that DJI sent to me just for a short period to do some testing on and give them feedback and give you guys feedback on what I think about it. Now, they didn't pay me, and I don't get to keep this. Wanted to take it out and find out what I like about this camera and what I don't like about it. Now, of course, the Mavic 2 Zoom is the identical twin of the Mavic 2 Pro. Everything about the drone is exactly the same except for this camera right here and the zoom feature. Of course, the Mavic 2 Pro has that 1-inch sensor and the other guts to go with that sensor. This, of course, is a smaller sensor. It has the 1/2-inch sensor. This sensor is much more like the original Mavic Pro and like is in the Mavic Air and in a lot of other consumer level drones. Now, of course, the new feature of this camera is that it can zoom in. It has a 2x optical zoom when you are in any resolution, whether it's 4K or 1080p or 2.7K. But if you are in HD, you also get an additional 2x digital lossless zoom, and they're just doing some tricks with the sensor and what part of the sensor they're using to get that lossless zoom. Now, before we dive into the zoom part itself, let's just do a refresh about the Mavic 2 platform, which includes all the same details for the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom. Of course, we have OcuSync 2.0, which is fantastic. You can fly it a reasonable distance and never have to worry about any sort of signal degradation. You don't have to worry about any hiccups. If you get some sort of objects in between you and the aircraft, you still don't have to worry about it, unlike if you are flying a Wi-Fi drone. So, that is one of the big things that I love about the Mavic 2 platform is OcuSync 2.0. I'm not worried about flying out 5 miles, but what I am worried about is being in absolute control and having the best picture possible so that I know what the aircraft is doing and I can control it to the best of my ability, be safe, and capture the images that I want to capture while I'm at a usable distance. I don't care about being 5 miles out, but I want a rock steady, solid image while I'm piloting it. And that is being delivered for sure with OcuSync 2.0 in the Mavic 2 platform. 31 estimated minutes of battery life. Now, in the real world, the most I've gotten out of either one of these is about 26 minutes. I really did push this one today as well and got a very similar flight time as I got on my Mavic 2 Pro. So they're very similar there as well. You're not going to get the 31 minutes in the real world, but the 26 minutes I think is really usable. Now that's pushing a little bit further than I like to go normally, but you can get that much. One of the other things that I really like about the Mavic 2 platform is that in sport mode you can go up to 45 miles an hour, which is just fantastic. Even when you're going 45 miles an hour, you're in sport mode, you still get a stabilized gimbal and you have a rock steady solid picture, and you don't see that fluttering around. You don't see any of that craziness that you see in some of the smaller drones. So that 45 miles an hour can make a big difference. And in regular positioning mode, which is the default mode, you can still get 30 miles an hour as well. And a lot of times that 30 miles per hour is really important because you need to cover a certain amount of distance for a shot that you want to get. And if you can only go 12 miles an hour, then that footage just is not really usable. 30 miles an hour in positioning mode is awesome. 45 miles an hour in sports mode is even cooler, and you get the full stabilized gimbal. Now, of course, with the Mavic 2 platform, you also get a whole bevy of other sensors to help you avoid objects. You have a top sensor to help you from running into ceiling or trees above you. You have sensors on the bottom, you have sensors on the back, and you have partially useful sensors on the side. This is one of the places I hope that DJI sometime in the future can improve, because these sensors that are on the side, on each side, are only used when you are active tracking or in tripod mode. In normal positioning mode, they are not utilized at all. And so they're only semi-useful. I hardly ever use those two modes in terms of tracking or active track, so they're really kind of useless for me. But hopefully sometime in the future DJI finds a way to be able to enable that so that we have more omnidirectional coverage more of the time. Now, don't let that confuse you, right? These sensors are clear back here in the back. You can still run into something if it comes from certain angles. So they're not going to protect you from everything, even if you're in active track mode or you're in tripod mode. So you still need to be careful. That's why you want to stay visual line of sight, and you want to be in control the entire time, know what's around you, and avoid danger. So let's go ahead and talk about the star of this show. The star of this show with the Mavic 2 Zoom is this camera right here. And let me just tell you, it is really, really good. Now, I was a bit skeptical about the 2X zoom. Now, I hardly ever film in 1080p when I'm flying with my drone. I almost always am in 4K. So the 2X digital lossless zoom is generally not a big deal for me. I'm generally not looking for that. So I'm really talking about the 2X optical zoom that you get at any resolution. And for me, I really, really enjoyed it playing around with it today. It really allows you to get a different perspective on things. And now I knew this going into it, right? I mean, I've got other cameras around with zooms and so on, but having that ability to actually change where you are in space without physically moving and get closer to an object really does make a big difference. Now, I fly at a local park quite frequently, and having that 2X zoom really kind of changed my perspective of flying at that park. It really brought other things that are outside of that park that I can't really get to when I'm flying from that park because of the visual line of sight and those sorts of things. It really brought other objects kind of into the picture and really gave me a whole different perspective of what's around it. That, I think, is really the beauty of that zoom, is it really just allows you, without physically being closer to something, gives you another perspective. So I think for a lot of you guys, I really think that zoom is going to be crazy useful. I see it being useful in a lot of different perspectives. I can see it being extremely useful for people that are doing inspections, using this for their jobs. You already have the ability to do stuff at 4K, and then being able to zoom in twice as close without having to get any physically closer to something is going to be really, really important. A lot of times when you're doing inspections, you have maybe guy wires, you have electrical lines, you have trees that just doesn't allow you to physically get as close as you want to something to be able to see it. Having that 2X optical zoom allows you just to be able to punch in close enough to be able to see what you want to be able to see. Photographers, I think, are going to really enjoy it as well because it allows you to be able to frame your picture exactly as you want it. You don't have to physically get closer. As you know, a lot of people spend a lot of money on zoom cameras for the type of lenses like on DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. The camera that you guys are watching from has a zoom lens on it. It allows me to go from like 18 to 35 millimeters. It allows me to really just be able to get the framing of the picture that I want without having to be physically closer. It just allows me to change that. And that is a large portion of the art of photography and videography, is being able to frame a subject or a scene the way that the artist wants to be able to do it. And having that zoom just allows you to be able to do that. I was really excited to be able to play around with it today and really kind of get that first-hand perspective. It just kind of really changes how you do things. Now, I do have to say, one kind of negative is in regards to that zoom as well. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, on a higher end lens like the one that you guys are watching from right now, this 18 to 35, it has a constant aperture. So the hole that allows light into the sensor stays constant when I adjust it from that 18 to 35. Now, the zoom on the Mavic 2 Zoom doesn't have a fixed aperture. It actually changes as you zoom. At 24 millimeters, which is really the zoomed out version, kind of the default view for the Mavic 2 Zoom, it is an f2.8. As you zoom in on a scene or a subject, you'll notice that the scene will become darker, and that's because at 48 millimeters, which is the full 2X optical zoom, it's an f3.8. So that's one full stop of difference. And now today, when I was out flying, it was a gray day, it was rainy, it was windy. And that full stop really made a big difference as I was zooming in. So it's one of those things that, from my perspective, it makes it a bit more challenging to be able to capture a nice zoom in on a subject, because how do you keep your exposure constant as you're zooming in? You really can't, because there's not, a corresponding kind of difference to be able to offset that while you're doing that zoom. In different lighting conditions, maybe it's a different issue, but today was a super great day. It was not bright, it was relatively dark, there was a thick cloud cover. And so that really did make a big difference. And I could really tell I had actually forgotten about that. I remember seeing that and hearing that during the announcement and seeing the specs on it. But when I went to use it today, it definitely made a difference in what I was trying to capture. So that's something that it's not necessarily a problem. A lot of cameras like DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, they come with kit lenses that do exactly the same thing. As you zoom in, it gets darker. It is a more closed aperture. And so it's not a problem, it's just something you need to be aware of as you use it. One of the new features that's specific to the Mavic 2 Zoom is a quick shot named Dolly Zoom, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. Now, I played around with that, and I see that there are a couple of issues with the way that it's been implemented. So first off, as far as I can tell, it's only implemented at 1080p. And again, as I was telling you earlier, I always film at 4K, and having that dolly zoom specifically at 1080p is a bit of a bummer, because then I have to, in my post-production, I have to stretch that out, I have to scale that up to 4K, and so you lose some of that resolution. So I would really love to see that at 4K and not at 1080p. I was also quite shocked at how much movement the aircraft made as it was doing the dolly zoom. It actually went really far back. I was quite surprised at how far back it went in order to get that dolly zoom effect, where it's zooming in but it's moving back, so it keeps your centering your screen in the same kind of perspective, but everything around, is parallaxing and moving and changing, and it's a really cool effect. I just think that it's something that is maybe a little bit of a gimmick and probably is not something that you're going to use a whole lot. It is really cool, but I think that it's something that is best used kind of sparingly. One of the last things I'm going to talk about in this initial impressions video is really about the footage and the quality of that footage that I got from the Mavic 2 Zoom. I personally do way more videos than I do pictures, and so for today's initial impressions, I really was focused in on doing videos. I only snapped a couple of pictures. The ones that I looked at looked great. They were taken in auto. I really didn't play around with it a whole lot, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about those, but I looked at video. Now, the video looked really, really good. Just straight out in normal color profile, the colors looked really good to me. There was a very, very noticeable lack of detail in the video as it came out of the camera, and that detail is really around sharpness. And I think that this is really a decision that DJI has made in order to try and preserve as much quality of the image as possible. They don't want to over sharpen the image. I think there was a lot of concern with the original Mavic that because of the way that that camera and sensor and the processor was designed, that they had to over sharpen the images and the videos that came out of that. And they did that in camera. Now, if you go and search around the internet, you're going to find a lot of discussions, not just about drones, but just in cameras in general, about doing sharpening in camera versus doing post-processing sharpening. I think generally you're going to find that there's arguments on both sides of the topic, just like there is for any topic you'll find. But in general, I think you're going to find more people kind of arguing for sharpening in post-processing versus sharpening in camera. Now, I think there's multiple different types of use cases, and not one answer fits all. So let me talk about two main use cases. Now, the first one is somebody who just wants to press a button and get the best image possible out of the camera. If that's you, I think you're going to want to go into your settings in DJI Go 4, and you're going to want to increase the sharpening on the Mavic 2 Zoom, because you are going to get a soft image and you're not going to get as much detail as you want. However, if you're somebody who's going to be going in and playing around with your images anyways to try and get the most out of them, you're going to be post-processing them in some form or fashion, I think you're going to want to leave the sharpness where it is in the camera, and you're going to want to do that sharpening in a post-processing step. And it's really simple to do. It's really easy to do in something like Adobe Premiere. Almost every editing package out there has the ability to do it. Specifically, you're looking to do an unsharp mask, and that allows you to be able to go in and get different amounts of sharpness in different areas, and allows you to be able to control how much sharpening you want instead of it being defined in the camera. Now, the problem with doing the sharpening in the camera is that you can't undo that. Whereas if you leave it a little soft in the camera and you do it in post-processing, you have much more control. Because sometimes images that are too sharp coming out of the camera, you get artifacts in the sky or in just kind of plain flat areas that should be plain and flat. You get kind of artifacts in there if it's too much sharpening is applied to it. And so by doing it in post-processing, it allows you to be able to control that, control where you're sharpening, how much, and so on. And different scenes call for different amounts of sharpening. So I vote for doing it in post-processing, but if you're the type of person that just wants to press a button and have the best image possible, I think you're going to want to do a little bit of additional sharpening in camera to get the best images. Otherwise, I think you're going to be maybe just a little bit disappointed with the quality of the video and images that you get straight out. Now, let me just summarize my position. I love this camera. I love this drone. The drone itself, the Mavic 2 platform, is fantastic. Yes, it's still missing a few bits and bobs from the Mavic Pro and some other things, right? We're still missing waypoints. We're still missing precision landing. We're still missing some other color profiles. We're still missing a few other things. But in my opinion, the Mavic 2 platform is a great drone platform. We're still missing a few items. It's not perfect yet, but I think DJI is really working hard to try and fill in some of those gaps that they weren't able to fill prior to launching. Now, I know a lot of people are upset about having missing features that existed in the original Mavic Pro that aren't here right now in the Mavic 2 line of products, but I think DJI is working hard to fill in those gaps to try and continue to round out the Mavic 2 platform to make it the best one that's available today. Should you choose the Mavic 2 Zoom or the Mavic 2 Pro? The answer really depends, and I don't have an answer for you right now because this is just my initial impressions. I've flown it probably about 5 batteries today, and that is it. So you'll have to wait for my answer on that, and I think the answer, of course, is going to be it depends. But I do love it. I love the Zoom. The Zoom really kind of allows you to do a lot of things that you just can't do with other drones without that Zoom capability. Use that dolly zoom a bit sparingly. And DJI, I would love for the dolly zoom to be at 4K. I would love for the hyperlapse to be at 4K. So that is my initial impressions of the Mavic 2 Zoom. I really enjoyed my flight today. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. It's a lot of money. It's $1249 here in the US as of this recording, but it is a fantastic drone so far. I look forward to playing around with it more before I've got to send it back to DJI. Thank them for letting me play around with it. And thanks to you guys. If you guys enjoy the content I'm putting out there, hit that subscribe button. Leave me some comments. What do you think about it? What would you like to see me do with the Mavic 2 Zoom? And I hope to see you on another video very, very soon. Get out and go fly it. Ciao.